This part of the video, which is mostly about the setting and the plot and nation states and how it kind of works with my region and the regions I interact with, is brought to you sarcastically by melatonin, which is the substance that you're supposed to produce in your brain to get you to go sleep at night, but I don't produce enough of it, so I take extra to meet a deficiency. Or it's a placebo that works really good. I
So
have no idea.
uh can I go into my inspiration? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can do whatever.
Okay.
We're
So
featuring your profile and your stuff, so it's your lead that we're taking here.
okay, so can you go back to my page and then go back to my gallery and then go inside the folder that's labeled it's the one at the top. So inside my profile, inside my gallery, top folder. It's labeled JG. It's labeled JG, Junior General. Okay, so I have a certain way of doing things. I know people don't take very small pixely art seriously, but I like it because it allows me to write better. Because each of these different images, they're a different faction, or they're a section of a faction. So some of these are terrorist groups, some of these are mercenaries, some of these are nations, and some of these are players I work with, and some of these are myself. So I'm kind of a big, serious writer, and I'm a sucker for storyline.
What is this, like or not Rise of like, what's that game you guys play? What's that
Nation
called?
states.
Nation States. Is that what this is for?
Yes. But I've given Nation States money. It's a good site. It's my place. Sorry that I accidentally added you guys. I know a lot of people. A lot of people on my list are tank people. So.
Where am I going?
Oh, just do your thing. Scroll up and down. Look at stuff or whatever. But basically, I needed this to be here.
Is there anyone you want to focus on or talk about, or?
Well,
yeah.
okay. So my inspiration for like almost all art is the idea that when I was in high school, I read 1984, and I was working on this nation. And I worked on this nation before I even read 1984, or maybe after I'd read only half of it. And the way I started making the whole setting was I wanted to make a dystopia that wasn't a bad place to live. I wanted to make a place very much like a dystopia, but like all the little things were changed so that it became a nice enough place that people would actually immigrate there.
So you wanted to make a complete contradiction that it can't exist in reality.
No, because okay, have you ever played BioShock?
No.
Okay, BioShock has two different totalitarian states. Neither one of them can exist because the limits of science and money and society. So most books that are about a totalitarian state or dystopian state, they're that way. They're scientifically impossible because too many things go wrong. I kind of created a sort of opposite of that, but it's more realistic. So I said, what if I could put cameras on every single street, and what if I could have every single phone be tapped, but there was a reason for it? There was a legitimate reason for it. And what if people moved to this country because they wanted their phones to be tapped? And that's the setting I created.
And that would require a society that is immune from abuse of such things, which there's really no such thing.
Well, yeah, that's true. A lot of the nations that are nation states couldn't exist in real life. Like one of the nations, it's illegal to wear clothing.
Yeah, nation states is weird like that.
It is weird.
I have my nation right here, the United Federation of Planetary Systems. Yeah, it's the United Federation of Planets, but the United Federation of Planets was already some deactive nation that it wouldn't let me take that name, so I just coined my own name, and I've been doing my own thing ever since. I'm in the Coalition of Democratic Nations. I mess around with it, now and then. It's kind of fun. I've got my own little laws and things of that nature.
I think Katarina would love living in a place where it's illegal to wear clothing.
Yeah, probably.
So,
but anyway, my government, it's three branches of government checks and balances. It's like, the United Federation of Planets, taking the U.S. governmental system, or the original foundation of it, and kind of expanding it in something much bigger. Got all these different military branch descriptions, stuff like that. So anyway.
So what ended up happening was, once I created the setting, I needed to have an explanation for why the people were like that and why they were comfortable being that way. And the thing was, it's technically two countries now. It's Dupio Giudice, which translates into dual causes, order, and liberty. They want to have complete order and almost complete liberty, like a balance. So a lot of the designs I make are actually what's called kit bashing. I take old designs that work or don't work, and I fiddle around with them. I put stuff inside of them. That's what I do. That's another piece of art I did. I just did that just to do it. I took a B1 Battle Droid and I fused B2 Super Battle Droid parts into it to see if it could be done. It looks pretty reasonable. It could look better. The first thing I did was I made the whole body stronger so it could take more of a beating. But the head was kind of flimsy. Something I do. I kind of fuse stuff together. I'm like a guy who like welds things together that don't belong together. I'm like a mad scientist. So the reason why Dupio Giudice and Vadia, they're basically like the same people, just in different countries, because they're so far apart that they can't govern each other. Their historical background is suffering and war and constantly being invaded and constantly almost being enslaved. So it's formed this very... how to explain this? In the real world, women got the right to vote, and they started to see like actual civil rights sometime after World War I and World War II, when they had been working in the factories to make weapons. And black people started to get their rights kind of around the same time, after they had been in the Civil War, after they'd worked in the factories during World War I and World War II, and after they served in parts of Korea and parts of Vietnam. So what I noticed was a connection between people who work in factories or fight on the front lines. They eventually get political power. They eventually become citizens. So what ended up happening in Vadia was so desperate for work and was so desperate for weapons all the time that it became a constant requirement that women be ready to work in the factories. They could not be a society where women were pregnant and barefoot. They wouldn't survive that way. They had to have them in the factories or everybody would die. That's what it became. So during the 1800s and 1900s, Vadia would constantly have all their men conscripted and all their women would be stuck in the factory, and that's what they had to do to survive. And because of that, Vadia began to gain a lot of respect for women, and it kind of shifted that way. The reason why Vadia could never really be racist was because Vadia couldn't oppress people. They needed them to be on the front lines to be soldiers. So basically, long story short, is that Vadia was a country that was so constantly at war and constantly under threat that they could not be an oppressive society.
They're forced to get along.
They're forced to get along.
Mutual survival.
The concept was any person who is of benefit to the military deserves rights. And because women were in the factories, they deserved rights. And because minorities were on the front line, they deserved rights. And because the young did the fighting, they deserved rights. And that's just how it worked out. And then, what happened was...
Because the old used to work in the factories and do the fighting, they deserve rights.
But what ended up happening was society became very democratic, but also became very authoritarian, because the military became society. Because whatever decision would benefit the military would keep society alive and would prevent them from being destroyed, enslaved, or conquered. So people were really, really willing to give up civil rights, but the problem was, since everybody had been in the military became everybody, so it became very democratic. It was really strange. And then, because the country became so paranoid, it not only saw enemies on the outside, but saw enemies inside itself. So, and also, they've had problems with cultic terrorist groups and whatnot. So the country basically has this policy where almost every single man has a person, like a best friend, and their specific job is to shoot you if you become a cultist. That's their job. The country's really paranoid. Every single person is afraid that they could potentially become the enemy, that they could be converted, that they could be brainwashed, that the devil could crawl inside of them. So a lot of imagery that's on the propaganda posters or whatever, it pictures people sacrificing themselves for each other, but it also pictures them committing suicide when they think they're being turned. So there's been a couple cases in the storyline where people are being possessed, and right before they get turned over, they kill themselves. So it's a really weird setting. That's basically what I ended up with. It's like a really dark setting, and people are just trying to get by. And Vadia has been inspired by a lot of different countries.
That sounds like a globalist wet dream.
Kinda. Vadia exists in nation-states, and nation-states is a place full of oppression, of slavery, of violence, of genocidal religious warfare, and Vadians are extremely compassionate people. When they see when they see a person being hurt, they feel like they're being harmed. So what ended up happening was when the country was finally safe and they defeated all their enemies, they found out about the outside world and how bad it was, and they became so angry that they basically just started a series of wars of liberation. And that's the setting. The country went from really, really poor to really, really rich because they began to sell weapons to all their allies. Well, the country's been having some economic woes because they're having a hard time understanding a global economy because there's such an isolationist power. But what's really strange about Vadia is that even though they're a very religious and a very political state, they're not on the left and they're not on the right. They will work with communists, they will work with fascists, they will work with anyone who has good enough civil rights and who has a good enough cause. And the people work very hard to make people get along. In fact, they formed what was known as the Triple Crusade. It was a crusade, a jihad, and a Jewish holy war declared all at once via those three powers against everyone else. Specifically Satanists, oppressive Christian states, oppressive Muslim states, and oppressive Jewish states. So it's like it's basically it's a series of wars and conflicts between order and chaos and liberty versus oppression. And Vadia will fight any dictatorship, and they will fight any anarchist group. That's just how it works for them.
Interesting, because anarchy just means a world without rulers, not a world without rules.
I know.
Anarchy isn't like the big chaos free-for-all that people think it is. As a matter of fact, all the things that they fear might come out of anarchy have already come out of the state. State is decided, which is like it's just this ironic oxymoron.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. So basically the whole setting's like really violent. It's really, really dark, and the people know that they won't be able to fix all the world's problems right away, but they know that if they give every single second of breath they have, they'll eventually be able to do it. And they believe that a single second they spend waiting is a second that somebody else is starving or they're being beaten or something. So it's a really interesting setting. And I've invented a lot of different militia groups, like upper left corner. That's a protecting it. They get surplus equipment. Upper right corner is a militia group. They are revolting against several different countries. They are kind of a neutral power. They're not with us or against us. Those are the moralists. They're like libertarians, but they are for the environment. They're kind of reactionary. They want things to be the way they used to be. And the way things used to be was they had parks, and society was very capitalist, and in the countries they exist, society has become very governmental capitalist. It's become like a state capitalism, but also the environment's been really affected. So they're basically mostly older people that are reacting to all this change. And then the national offenders, they're like the National Guard for Vadia. That's a mold. It's for different camo colors. I have 2 different brands of camo I invented myself. They're basically versions of native woodland. And then the rest of them are just terrorist groups, militias, uniforms, ammo, camo colors, and I just do a little bit of everything. These are the Juraaxians. They were a people that used to enslave other people in the setting that I got involved in, but when the player quit, the country basically turned into anarchy, and 8 different countries fought over the land. This is one of the groups that survived. They're controlled by some warlord. So that's basically like the whole setting. That's kind of my my thing. Is I like to see very ugly things twisted into beautiful things. So that's just me. I don't know if people understand that or not. Is Richard okay?
Yeah.
So basically, like the military shooting Obama for treason, that's turning a very ugly thing into a very beautiful thing.
That's debatable.
Oh, come on, Richard.
But Vadi does have a policy that if the emperor ever does become corrupted or ever does lose the will of the people, he will be executed on sight. Even though he's the most powerful person in the world and his word is basically law. That's basically how
I
it
wish
runs.
we had that frickin' policy.
Uh,
Technically, we do, just nobody's following it.
the way it's set up is the state watches the people and the people watch the state. So for every single camera that's pointed at people by the government, there's 2 cameras pointed by the people at the state. And the people who actually watch the people and tap all their phones, they are being watched by other people who are being watched by other people who upload what they do to live stream so that everyone can see it. So it's a series of people watching each other.
Sounds like candid camera on steroids.
Yeah, I mean, that I wouldn't mind. It's like, one thing I've always said is that, all these cameras that are on the streets, the only thing that I mind about them is that it's not a transparent, publicly accessible system. Anybody should be able to utilize those, not just government, this, that, and whatever. So I feel that, if the people want to survey themselves, that's fine. Kind of like, that's what social media is. All these different, posts and pictures and videos and stuff to social media, that's the people putting surveillance on themselves. That was actually mentioned on, I do believe, an episode of CSI not too horribly long ago. I think it was one of those shows like that. They were kind of laughing, like, wow, they've made it so easy that people survey themselves.
It's partially because of the paranoia, but it's also out of concern. Because the fact that everything is monitored, it's made it very hard for people to abuse each other. And it's also made crime very hard. Actually, the thing that really made, that's for an alternate history setting where the fascist movement was controlled by not the Illuminati, and they became a less racist but still nationalistic power. I've had it's an evil thing turn into a good thing. That's something I do.
I mean, I think that people have the right to survey themselves if they want to. I just think that the government doesn't have the right to survey the people against their will. That's that's kind of like my standpoint on it. Like, if the people want to do it, then that's their freedom to go ahead and do that if that's what they want to do. But it shouldn't be forced on them by Big Brother. Like, oh, we're going to watch you, you can't watch anything, and fuck you, and this is forced on you. I don't agree with it. But if the people want to survey themselves, I have no problem with that, because then that's the will of the people, that's what the people want to do, and that's their freedom and their right to do it.
Try the bottom middle one. Yeah, the bottom middle one. So this is back from the 40s in the setting. The group to the right, they're called the Anglos, and the people on the left are the Vadians. The Anglos were an ally, but now they're part of Vadia. That's how the process works. Historically, every single ally that Vadia has ever had has become part of Vadia at one point or another via election or just because they decide to join. Vadia's process of conquest isn't via brute force or via fear, They simply seduce their allies into becoming themselves, and they seduce their enemies into becoming their allies. And when they invade a country, they basically they restart society from the bottom up, and they change the whole education system so that the people who are produced by the education system they're their own people, but they're also Vadians. So when they defeat, Germans or Russians, they're still German or Russian, but they're also Vadians. The country also has a very, very functioning orphanage system, which produces people who are extremely patriotic because the state takes good care of them. Which is the reason why the last 3 leaders in both countries have been orphans. Because the people who are produced by the orphans become so patriotic that they basically work really hard in school and they move all the way to the top of the ranks. Like the character the reason why everything's named Seth is because Seth he's the guy who founded DG. He's a martyr that grew up in the system. He was born without parents. His only family was 2 other people in the orphanage, and he lost both of them, one to cancer and the other one to the wars, and then he founded his own country, and he worked and he worked and he worked, and he trained other people to do their jobs, and he kind of let them do their thing, and then eventually he worked himself so hard that he died.
So basically, it's what patriotism is supposed to be: loyalty to the people, not loyalty to a flag or corporation or a symbol or a president or whatever, but loyalty to the people of your country.
More or less. There's this whole concept within the religion. The religion's kind of based off of Christianity, but it's not quite the same. For example, the Vadians do not know where the universe came from, and they don't care. It doesn't matter to them. It doesn't affect anything. What they care about is if people are okay. So to them, they have a god, and they're not sure if it's a male or a female or what it is. All they know is, according to their folktale, you ever heard of Prometheus?
Yeah, I've heard of Prometheus.
Prometheus was a titan that gave mankind fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they think God is. To them, their god, called the Enlightened One, he is the being that gave them technology. According to their folklore, they were a group of tribes that kind of lived in dirt and muck, and they fought amongst each other, and they could never go anywhere or do anything. And the first person among them, he was given a flower, and that flower, he ate it, and it infected him with a virus, and the virus warped his brain and his mind and his body, and it made him the first Vadian. This was thousands of years before Vadia, though. The people are called the Illumians, after their god, the Enlightened One. The Illumians mean the people who are enlightened.
I know what illumination means in that context.
Yeah. So basically, they basically see God as this being who gave them knowledge, and the knowledge made them who they are. And in exchange, they gave their complete and total loyalty for that knowledge. But the knowledge allowed them to bribe other tribes to join them, allowed them to conquer other tribes, it allowed them to secure their borders, to discover copper, to develop mining technology. All of that knowledge made them a very powerful and strong people, and because of that, they became extremely religious as a kind of payback. So that's kind of how the society warped itself. And every couple hundred years, they have a reform movement where the religion kind of changes. The old way, the new way, the Seth way. According to the storyline, when Seth died, he went... I create really strange stories. I don't know where I get the ideas for this stuff, but when Seth died, he went to some place between heaven and hell, according to the story, and he basically sat down with what they call the Dark One and what they call the Enlightened One, and he threatened both of them, and it got into a little fist fight. And what ended up happening was Seth, because of how bad things had been his entire life, he had actually resented his own god, and he thought he thought the two gods were the same. He thought the Satan was no different from the devil. He thought they were just people playing chess, and he was one of the stupid pawns caught in the crossfire. And according to the story, God surrendered to him just for no reason. And in the setting, the people are trying to figure out what that even means. They're completely confused what's going on. They don't understand why this happened. Let me put it this way. Seth is Jesus. The people are finally realizing that their God doesn't hate them and actually loves them, and they don't understand what that means, more or less. It's like
I don't believe heaven and hell are places. I believe that they are states of being. So whether you're talking about before this life, during this life,
story.
well, yeah, I know. Whatever comes next. I know. I'm just saying my personal beliefs on it. I don't believe in heaven or hell as places. They're states of being. So whether you're talking about before this life, during this life, or whatever comes next, whatever state you decide to be in based on your belief systems is what you're going to align with. I mean, shit attracts flies, right? If you don't want flies attracted to you, be that which is not attracting flies. So I guess a simpler way of saying that is all action.
Well,
or as my dad might say, he who fucks up gets fucked. I mean, whatever way you want to put it.
The story has a lot of interesting, like it's kind of science fiction in some areas. Because of nation states, sometimes science fiction does and does not exist, and sometimes fantasy does and does not exist. It depends on who I interact with. But according to the story's lore, when great people die, they kind of go into like this limbo, kind of like what's called purgatory, and they make the decision if they want to go to paradise or if they want to start all over again and struggle more. And great people in the story, they choose to struggle many, many times. For example, Seth has been born 2.5 times, and both times he struggled and struggled and suffered, but he built empires from his struggle. And then there are other characters, like Fativ. I create strange names. I use bits of German. I glue them together. And then there was Loki, and there was also Grillia. There's been all these different people, and they've been born over and over again. Every time they're born, they don't remember who they were prior until they're like 20-something, and they struggle and they struggle and they struggle, and they build empires. It's kind of a process. So basically, like all the great leaders that Vadi's ever had are basically the same 4 people over and over and over again. It's really strange. Another weird thing about the Illumians, the people, is that they don't actually go to heaven. They go somewhere else typically. They either go to heaven, they go to this place that's kind of like Earth, but it's like 1,000 times worse. And all it is just violence. It's just constant, unearthly violence. And the violence is over what will happen to Earth. But Earth isn't Earth. It's basically like an alternate world where 2 sides are fighting to invade the real world, but they're always at a stalemate, so neither side can do that. And that's basically where Vadians end up. They either end up there, heaven, or they just go back to the real world all over again.
And if people want to know more about this stuff and interact by actually playing nation states, what web address would they put into their web browser?
I believe it's just nation states. They just type in nation states. It has its own Wikipedia page, and
so .com, .net, .org.
It's .net.
Okay. Nationstates.net.
So like, here's Vadia. Can I send you the link to Vadia? No. Just for a sec.
Do what?
Can I send you the link to Vadia? Just for a sec.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So on this side, I'm in this community. It's called a region. It's like a place. It's like a continent, kind of. And we have our own map and everything. So see that region right there, Aurelia? That's the region. We have our own map. We have our own community. It's mostly full of younger people than me. I teach them how to fight, and how to role play, and how to tell stories and all that. So I'm a kind of a mentor to them. I teach them how to organize their militaries and how guns work and stuff like that. I have
Where
a
do you want me to click?
Oh, you can click on Aurelia if you want.
Here?
Below the flag. Below the flag is the word region. Down, down. There you go. Aurelia. Now, do you see the word map? It's in green. It's below the word weapons. Okay. Lower your mouse half the screen. Okay. Now see the green stuff above? Above you.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Okay, so that's the map. And in the region, we all have responsibilities, we all have problems. So that area right there, that's green, it's in the upper right corner, it's next to a purple area called Tom. That's where Ralph is. It's like it's like a colony, sort of. And these rest of these countries are just other nations I interact with, and I teach them how to write and how to do stuff.
So these are chains of islands, apparently.
Yep, really big islands. Some of them hold 2 billion people. Like the countries hold 2 billion people. The land masses hold like 10. So they're very big land masses, and people fight over them a lot. But they're still learning how to do that. So if you go back, I'm also doing a weapons depot, weapons expo. It's at the very top of the Aurelia region page. So the previous one. You see it back, I guess. Yeah, at the top of the page, below, the first thing at the world factbook entry. Welcome. There you go, the expo. That's where I am kind of trying to get the community to work together. So this is the sign up place where people fill out a little thing, and it has fine print saying, "I will not shoot other people at the expo. I will not mug people at the expo," because I had to do that. Half these countries they actually hate each other. Some of them are from outside the region. We have a lot of people from outside the region trying to sell stuff at the expo. King, he's from the region. I'm from the region. Tom Marion Reich, he's from the region. Tom Marion Reich is actually a very bad nation, but I'm hoping that we can broker peace by working together. Verdi is actually a very close friend of mine. He's right next door. We share everything, pretty much. Except the guy who runs the nation's really busy. There's Williamsburg. He runs Cato. It's the biggest alliance. It's like NATO, but way bigger and way less organized. It's full of people who have no idea what they're doing. It's like a noob alliance. And then T-Reich is he's part of the Grand Alliance, and they're like a bunch of fascist countries with huge militaries. Winter, whatever, he's new. He's kind of like Canada. He's kind of neutral to it all, but he's still interested in being around. That's an outside power trying to sell stuff. That's Catholic Polish Union. He's part of Cato, but he's too fascist to be part of Cato. I think he should get kicked out. So that's basically what I do. I teach people how to write. I tell stories. I create factions. I propose ideas and all that. For the region, I'm officially in charge of RP for the most part. I'm also in charge of keeping the community active and make sure everyone talks to each other. So whenever the community stops having fun and talking to each other, I create something to talk about. That's what I do. And all the countries who have their militaries organized, I help them do that. So that's me. I'm the guy. I'm the this is how your military works kind of guy. Are you on another region? I think you're in another region. Yeah, you're in the world. You're in the world, yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yep. So Nation's just like a really big place, and it has like a lot of anything can happen. It's a place where anything can happen, but within certain limits. For example, the biggest arms company in nation states, Richard, have you heard of Lyris? Lyris Arms?
Lyris Arms. Mm-hmm.
You heard of them?
No.
They're like the biggest arms company in all of nation states. Lyris Arms has 10 billion people. half of them make weapons, and the other half of them are soldiers, and that is mathematically impossible. Except Lyris makes insane amounts of money every single day. I mean, every single day. There's like 100 players that order weapons from them every single day, and they spend billions of dollars all the time. Lyris just rakes in money hand over fist, and they use it to build more weapons and have a huge military.
So is this the full nation states map?
No, this is just the map of the region that you clicked on.
No, that's just one region out of many. That's the full nation states map is like
Impossible to make.
It wouldn't even fit on a planet. I think it would be like planets. I think that's the more accurate way of putting it. That's the way I compose my nation, because it's like, okay, it's you got like millions of people on this thing. There's no way you could have a world map that could fit every single nation.
Yeah.
What typically ends up happening is that in my setting, I picture the planet they're on as being like the size of Jupiter or bigger. Don't ask me how that works. It just does.
It's physically impossible.
Because if I didn't do that, if I had to make like a single Earth-sized setting, I wouldn't be able to interact with as many people. And I like interacting with lots of different nations. And also, players quit all the time, so you need a big place to be able to constantly interact with new people, because old people will give up.
Unless it's like a higher vibratory frequency reality where matter's more malleable, so it would be able to withstand higher levels of gravity without like literally flattening everything into nothing.
Pretty much. And so it's a really big world, and there's a lot of different countries that interact with each other, and each of them is like the size of China when it comes to population. Like I have 2 billion people in 2 separate nations, which I can legally do because my first nation has 8 billion people, so I just half it and I split it amongst 2 nations. So you'll have like there's only like 7 or 8 billion people in the real world, and I have 4. So that just tells you how big nation states can be.
7 point something in the real world.
Yeah, so like
I have 3.438 billion people within my nation, just my nation.
Shouldn't you RP it so you have more because you're in the future? You can do that. You can legally do that.
Mm.
The rules, according to the community, are that that's your population for MT. You can go down, but you can't go up. But in FT, because you control entire planets, you're allowed to go way higher. You just can't have more than 3 planets when you start off. And if you get more planets, then you have to conquer them from other people and things like that. I'm okay with that. I have three planets in FT as well. According to the storyline, the Illumians, they have a past, which I RP'd, and they have a future, which I RP'd. But I prefer MT because FT is either full of science, which I'm bad at, or it's full of imagination, and I need to be in like a box. Like, I can't have ships that are invincible, that have like a million cannons. My brain cannot understand that. I need things to be hard. Which is why all my designs are kit bashes. I take something broken, I try to make it work. I can do that, but what I can't do is I can't design a spaceship and make it like I can't do the whole Star Trek thing, but I can't do the whole like perfect physics and science thing. So basically, when I write for FT, I get too OCD, so I can't do it.
The next part of the video will be about not Facebook, because it like pays you if you produce enough content, because they get ad revenue and they want you to get a cut of that ad revenue so that you make more material that can get more ad revenue, because that's how YouTube works, because it's a good system, because Facebook is a stupid system. Yeah. By the way, the funny thing about this second thing is that like it wants to link up to all your other stuff so that you can be completely connected and you can transition from one piece of social media to another. But Facebook has blocked this not Facebook because Facebook sucks and they don't want people to know there's a better thing that is not Facebook because it sucks that bad. So, yeah.